You're back on
Jesus.
traditional radio, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you can't say stroke-off session?
I mean, yeah,
All right.
it's
Well,
already done a couple of times,
I'll
so
dial it back a
yeah, we're
little.
already there. Yeah, maybe just like one notch down. We were actually saying earlier how we really feel as though the people who abuse swearing are the ones who ruin swearing for everyone. Who actually turned it
Oh,
into an
I'm
inappropriate thing.
brutal. I'm brutal on the podcast. I think it's more of a nervous twitch too for me. But
For sure.
no, boys. The Crosby interview was awesome. We're obviously very thankful to get his time. Witt's a little closer to him than I am because he played a little bit longer with him. But Witt did a great job of dragging some stuff out of him, and I think that he felt that it was a time where he could come out and he'd be comfortable on our platform in order to talk about some stories and some behind the scenes stuff. But you guys mentioned it, like it was frustrating for me playing with him and knowing who he is as a guy, and he likes to have fun, but he just keeps it under wraps. Like, it's squeaky clean. It's like Jason Bourne, like in and out, like nobody saw him. It was like, oh, was he there? Was he not there? and he's done a great job of maintaining his image, and he doesn't really want anyone knowing about his private life. And I can understand why a lot of maybe more so fans of other teams. I don't think Penguins fans care as long as he keeps bringing the championships.
Mm-hmm.
But they're kind of like, they could use that against him, like, oh, he's a nerd. He's just a hockey nerd. He doesn't have any friends. Where it's the complete opposite. He's one of us. He's a beauty. He just doesn't let anyone in. So it was nice to hear that, and nice to see people see another side of him they hadn't seen before.
So even as his teammate, you never really got to know him too much. Like, I just think of Tiger Woods and how Tiger Woods was a golf robot, and all Tiger Woods is golf, and he was the least interesting person on earth until, oh my God, Tiger Woods is, his life was something else. I'm assuming there's no sense that that's going to happen with Sidney Crosby, but you guys really had no sense of what he does socially or for fun?
No, I did. I think everyone around him and who's close to him knows that he doesn't want anyone else knowing about it. So his privacy is very important to him. And you know how the media is sometimes, where you give him an inch, they take a mile. So he's went from day one. He's been like, I'm not going to give them anything. I'm going to be very cookie cutter. But man, when I play with him, I'll never forget. I made the team at a training camp, and sure enough, that year we were going to play in the World Premier Games in Sweden. So I was going to be playing my first ever NHL game in Sweden against the Ottawa Senators. So when we were flying over there, we had a 9-hour flight, whatever it was. Well, I didn't know him that well. He ended up calling me up, and he was like, "Hey, sit down." He's like, "I want to hear some stories." And just like right away, it's like, hey, this guy's embracing the fact that I'm going out and being a bit of a mess. He's not going out being a mess because he's got bigger fish to fry as far as playing and maintaining his reputation. But it was just like, it was interesting to see how he was so one of the guys. And this younger guy, 2 years younger than me, was kind of calling me over to be a jester and be like, entertain me with some stories here, buddy. And it was just funny. So we shot the a little bit. And, oh, there we go. We had to squeeze that one out.
That one. It's all good.
So, no, it was just really cool. And from that moment on, I'm like, okay, this guy is not a hockey nerd. He just kind of has to maintain that image to kind of keep himself sane.
So I think, anyway, I'm probably taking a leap here as someone who doesn't know him, but when I was listening to your guys' podcast and he was talking about PK and the Stanley Cup Finals run in and basically how that all ended up being the thing with the Listerine and all that stuff, how it bothered him. It didn't seem like he was too bothered by PK the guy, maybe something that he said to Gensel, but the bigger thing was that he seemed annoyed he had to talk about the Listerine in, a Stanley Cup Finals. That media members were going to come up to him and ask him about that rivalry and that he couldn't focus on hockey. And my biggest point of optimism was actually that, okay, maybe part of this is just he is so hyper-focused on hockey and so concentrated on it that he doesn't want to lose anything in being dragged down by stuff that he doesn't care about as much. And that maybe, just maybe, when this guy's career is over, we actually will get more from him when hockey is no longer his primary focus. Do you feel that way, or do you just think that he's going to keep the vault sealed forever?
No, absolutely. And no wonder so many fan bases and fans from other teams hate him. Is because could you imagine having a guy in your organization who is so dedicated to the game where when he's focused and he's dialed into the season, he wants no other distractions than he wants to be prepared to the fullest. He doesn't want to have to deal with questions, for instance, like the Listerine thing, where that was in the Stanley Cup Finals. He's got line matches to worry about. I believe that was the one where they lost quite a few guys on the back end too. So they're they had to win that series in the center ice position, and sure enough, he ended up coming through and leading them. I believe that was the year he won the Conn Smythe, correct?
He won it against the Sharks, and I don't know if he won it that year. I think so. Like, I just assume he wins them all.
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah, exactly.
That's kind of his deal.
But he's so dedicated. Where there's so much mentally, he's dialed in as well. Like, some guys can just show up, but he kind of has the full package. And it definitely interested to hear that. He did seem annoyed when I asked him about it. He was still annoyed by it when I asked him in the interview.
Biz, I don't know how you feel about this, but I know that when I went from playing to the media side a little bit, and I'd be like, all right, I'm going to get my old teammate on. This guy's a beauty. Wait till you guys hear this guy. And then you'd hear them, and it's like there's just nothing there. And you know that there is to these people. Have you felt on the media side, have you felt frustration at trying to share the personality of some of these guys?
One thing about me, it amazes me how kind of scared some guys are to, like, maybe say the wrong thing and then lose their job or something. And hey, I could get it. I'm completely different. I'll say whatever I want and I'll deal with the consequences after, because if I'm saying it, it's usually because I meant it. I mean, some guys don't have, some people don't have financial security in order to do that. I guess I really necessarily don't either, but I'm fortunate enough where I'm on a platform like Barstool where I know the line. I'm not going to be, sexist or racist, because that's not who I am. I might say something that maybe crosses the line and might offend a few, but hey, at the end of the day, man, we're just trying to have a good time, and we don't want to be censored to that level. And some of these guys, yeah, they come on and they freeze up. I mean, we had David Ling on, who's one of the funniest guys, apparently. Yeah. Later, I think he finished in the ECHL in Brampton, and I'd heard stories about him. I'd heard so many guys tell me how hilarious it was. When he came on, he ended up texting us after and being like, "Boys, I was so nervous," and he really didn't open up at all or say anything, and it was a shock. And I guess some guys just kind of, when the mic's going and they know people are going to be listening in, they freeze up a little bit. And as I mentioned, they're just concerned about maybe the consequences of the story they tell. So whatever, that's to each their own, though. I don't hold it against guys. I wouldn't say it's a frustration. It's more of that's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, where does it come from for the guys who are secure in their careers, though? Because I get it when, you're fighting for a roster spot. You just want to keep your head down, your nose clean, and you don't want to have any type of coach come up to you and say, we heard you on this podcast and you said this thing. And, it's actually in a game where we're talking about you versus the other guy and the difference is a hair. It's going to be the other guy because this turned out to be the actual hair. But dudes who are in the league who, actually have that financial security, who are really good players, who have a huge career, like huge futures, especially even men. We get on Leaf just about every single week. And I can tell you the only interesting guys that we ever got to talk to or that were interesting in speaking to them were Morgan Riley and Nazem Kadri. And everybody else basically clamps up. Is it more the culture of you don't want to have the soundbite with other guys in the room? Is it more that people are pissed off at the media in general and cautious of what's going to happen if they do say something? Like, where is the hesitancy for those guys?
It depends what market you're in, too. I think that social media has really hurt. It's amazing. It's helped media guys advance their own careers, but I think it might have hurt them in a sense of getting stuff out of players, because every time they do an interview, if they say something even remotely controversial or even just, take a little jab jokingly at someone, next thing you know, it's the headline. People are reading the headline, they're commenting on the bottom of it, and then it gets blown out of proportion when many people don't even click on the article to read it or listen to the interview. It's just clickbait headlines where a lot of guys have been like, you know what, I'm not even going to bother anymore. It's not worth it. It's just going to become a distraction. And to me personally, I think that's a big issue where, so on our podcast, we give them full creative control. If they come on for an interview, if the team wants to listen and take something out that they might think would stir the pot a little bit, they have free reign to do so. We're not in it to hurt anyone, and neither are you guys. It's just, it's sometimes when you're not getting the quotes and it's not a very interesting article, you got to kind of beef it up somehow, correct? So that's just where I'm at with that side of it.
No, I get it. And honestly, we try to put a lot of emphasis on not, screen capping the wrong thing and just pushing it out there. Like, we've had times where guys have said something and we know it'll be good for clicks or whatever, but we'll leave it out. Like, we We talked to a former colleague of yours just the other day, Pat McAfee, and he said something that I was like, oh, man, that's really good, but I don't want to put it in there because, I don't want to take it out of context. I just want to have people take it in this way, which is
now,
the full.
Saying that he's the type of guy where he wouldn't care.
Probably.
Out of it. He lives for that, but I get what you're saying. That's commendable. That's nice,
sure.
Nice of you guys to do.
But also, yeah, there are times where you're like, man, we brought you on. We want to try to get more eyeballs on this interview, or we want to have more people listen to this because we think it was really good. How do we do that? Sometimes it involves it. So I get that element of like, that's where you don't trust the media. And we probably do. I think some people are trying to do a better job of it. Some people just don't care. It's whatever. They just want the clicks. But the part where I look at players and say, okay, well, where do you guys own some of this responsibility is, well, if everybody just spoke their mind like it is in the NBA to a certain degree, it becomes the norm. And then you don't take these things, like you don't have to blow stupid tiny things more out of proportion because you have more to work with.
Yeah, I just think it's the culture too. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It maybe sucks for the for the entertainment aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I guess you could argue that a lot of Canadians and a lot of traditional hockey fans think that the NBA is a bit of a gong show, which I find NBA Twitter and all the antics hilarious, but it is a sideshow. So I think that there can definitely be a balance and a median met. But and I'm hoping that our podcast and other news outlets can help do that, because I feel that the amount of money that fans are spending for tickets and merchandise and whatever it may be, I feel like they kind of deserve to hear some of the stories and some of the fun stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And these guys do have personality and they are funny. I just want to try to bring it out of them. So that's my goal since I've gotten into media, as I'm sure the same for you guys.
Now that I'm in the media and I look back at my own playing days, and I'm weighing in on other people, you're talking about the fun stuff that happens off the ice. I'm like, man, I probably should have taken it more seriously in, summer X or weekend Y. Do you look back at your own, you mentioned talking to Sid and, being a beauty or being a mess days and all that. Do you have regrets about that? Or does that sort of leave you where you are now with a media career and a following? Or do you wish going back you could have been a squeaky clean player along the lines of a Sid?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say I have regrets. I think that I wish especially when I got to the NHL level, that I would have trained harder and maybe partied less. Mm. I just, that's me though. I like having a good time, although I do work more now than I ever have in my life. But it was that time of my life where I wanted to experience things and do fun stuff and go to music festivals and live like a normal human being. So, I did that. And I think that, maybe the alcohol and some of the drugs, I don't know if you guys are allowed to put that on there.
It's legal.
But that kind of, deteriorated my body a little bit, and I didn't last as long. But I still got a 12-year career out of it. And I think that, being that sort of jester at the NHL level and joking around, might even help me stick around there longer because of my skill set. I was, I wasn't complaining about ice time. I was just making sure everybody else was happy, and I was willing to stick up for them. So, like I said, not really regrets. Maybe looking back, I wish I would have done a few things differently. But then now saying that, it has led me into my post career, which now maybe I'm thankful for that side, that I was kind of that guy when I played. So that's a great question, and I've talked about it on the podcast before. I'm grateful for where I am now.
Yeah, I think everybody does that, though, right? Even if you're happy in your life, you just try to play out different scenarios of what you think you could have done better. Like, nobody's perfect, so you just assume, like, okay, maybe had I just done this one thing. Like, your life is pretty good, I would assume. Like, from what I see on your Instagram, your Twitter, it seems like you're doing okay. Like,
yeah, like, I mean, we're going totally different stratosphere, where he's probably dialing it in 6 days a week, doing 2-a-days.
Right.
Where I remember I think it was my second or third last summer in the NHL, and I was traveling every other week, if not 3 weekends a month, to go do either Bonnaroo Music Festival or go to California for the weekend. So you're going Friday, Saturday, Sunday boozing like that. You're not getting any type of recovery. You're behind on your training a little bit because you get in Monday and you're sluggish. There was definitely some parties.
That's fantastic. Do you? I guess when I look at the NHL today, I look back at my own skill set and I think, thank God I don't have to play anymore. I wasn't good when I played, let alone at this level. Is there any element of you that feels relief in retirement that you don't have to try to keep up with these guys?
Oh man, I was fortunate where I was playing pro at the perfect time, where fighting was still relevant when I came in. I was able to squeak out 5 years, but then my last 2 years in the American League, when I was playing in Ontario, California, with the LA Kings farm team, I was like, these kids are just getting faster and faster. And just because of the technology with the equipment and the way these kids train nowadays, and there's not a lot of partiers. They're very strict in their regimen as far as diet, no alcohol, their hydration, just everything, supplements, their recovery. And I couldn't keep up. I was trying to keep up. In my last year, I tore both my ACLs. My body just literally imploded. So and I was actually talking to Vinny Laverde, who was our captain, when we won the Calder Cup with Manchester. That was my first year out of the National Hockey League. And he was saying, man, I'm training at this place in Chicago this summer, and these young kids, man, they are freaks. They're just throwing weight around. They're lightning fast. So the game of hockey is headed in a very good direction. I'm happy that fighting's been weeded out at least a little bit. I like the organic side of it, but the game of hockey is in a very good place.
Yeah, I think so too. And again, this is all tying into the same theme that we've had in terms of like, how do you just parlay that into the other stuff? Because I just do think that a lot of players get a bad rap in terms of, well, hockey players are boring. And that's just kind of been ingrained into the way the public gets it. But as we know from, doing this job, that a big part of it is that when you talk every day, you get to share your stories. People feel a greater connection to you. And that has a benefit, I think, for everyone. Being able to tell your story is fun. Having someone listen to it and care about it is cool. Like, it's an interesting thing. And if you're a fan, and you're spending money on going to games and you're spending all this time investing in someone, it's like, do you want a little bit more? Is it a reasonable expectation to ask for more? And I think that's kind of where, we're going to have to figure things out moving forward with hockey, because the game is great. And I don't think anyone's really complaining about that enjoys the sport. I think it's just, that secondary element that, there's been a spotlight on over the last couple of years. Before we let you go, because you've been really generous with the time, we got one of two.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, one of two hockey topics for you. I'll let you choose. So we were discussing, what happens with RFAs, and okay, that's great. These guys want to get their money. That's cool. But either do you think older players are a little bit upset considering they put all this time in to hit unrestricted free agency, and now maybe less money is going to be there because guys who are younger want to get paid? Or topic number two, which we're going to do later, your favorite FU candidate for this season in terms of a guy who either had a bad narrative, got passed over by a team, had a bad season overall that you think has a good chance for a bounce back that you'd be really interested in seeing?
I'll start with the first one, and then we can maybe go to the second one after.
Okay.
I'm assuming you're kind of referencing maybe the situation that Nylander went through last year and now Marner's going through this year. Is that kind of where you're headed with that question?
I think it's all those guys, like Marner. So my point was this. I was like, okay, you're John Tavares, right? You just decided to come to Toronto, and they give you this whole video presentation of all the young guys you're going to play with. You text Austin Matthews, you say, hey, you're going to be here? He's like, yep, I want to be here. They show you a video presentation where you're going to play with Marner, this playmaker that's going to set you up for those tap-ins that you love when you're around the net. Beautiful. This is all great. You take $11 million. You decide to kind of screw over your legacy on the island to a certain degree. Like, he's never going to have the love there that he could have, that he spent his whole career. And he says, no, I'm a Toronto guy. I want to win here. And he knows that his entire legacy now is, will he win in Toronto? Is he the prodigal son? And then an offseason later, Mitch Marner, who is his line mate, who goes up by 30 points last year, while Tavares only goes up by 4, wants more money than him, when he hasn't put together nearly even close to the resume that he has. And if I was him personally, right. I'm not speaking for him.
I completely agree. We talked about it on yesterday's podcast with Nathan McKinnon beforehand, because I heard a rumor that maybe the Islanders were going to offer Steve Marner for 7 years at $91 million. I think the number was. Okay. It could be a rumor, probably is. But yeah, it's you got Nylander with Nylander's situation. He ends up having a bad year, and analytically they said he was okay. The puck just wasn't falling his way, but you kind of, screw up the team a little bit. He wasn't there, and all of a sudden he comes back at a couple of lines. Okay, you just burnt 1 year of John Tavares because they couldn't get over the hump against Boston. Not saying it's Nylander's fault, but when you're making that type of money, you need to be impactful in playoffs. Like, you're now a go-to guy. So whatever didn't happen. Now you got the Marner situation. Well, I mean, I could see this going into the season a little bit. I could see this not getting done before the season begins. And then what happens if another situation where the chemistry is all messed up, and next thing you know, they burn another year off of all these guys' contracts? And because their window is closing here, because it seems as if though it's going to be a 5-year run, because Matthews more than likely is going to leave afterward. He probably wants to come back to Coyotes. Shout out to the Coyotes, Desert, Desert Dogs. And then and I just, like you said, it's just he's had a great 2 years. The sample size is there enough, but do you need 12 million? Is 11? Is 10.5 not enough? Where you can put other pieces around you in order to win and become gods in Toronto, then the marketing dollars were far past whatever money you would have made, a little bit extra on those contracts for the rest of your life. If Marner signs there and takes a little bit of a hometown discount and they end up going on to win the Stanley Cup, that guy will be able to – he could murder someone. They'd be burying the bodies for him
for sure.
in Toronto.
You're not wrong.
Right?
True.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I guess what's surprising to me is it's more about – it's kind of like a cockfight where, and as opposed to creating your legacy and building a winning team. And that all starts from the top. And I'm not saying anyone's wrong for going to get their money, but look at the culture they created in Boston where, everybody sees, or even Pittsburgh, when Sid's making 8-7 when he should be making 12. And he's kind of taking the Tom Brady approach. And he said it only works if everybody takes a little bit of a discount. Kunitz left a little bit of money on the table, he talked about. Evgeny Malkin left money on the table. Chris Letang probably left a little bit. So, $500,000 here, $750,000 there, that's why they have 3 rings, guys. And if those guys in Toronto, it's more about their egos and about making their money, fine. That's cool, and that's their choice. And I'm going to have a little bit of an opinion on it, saying, it would have been nice to win the championships, but I'm telling you, man, that fan base will turn on you quick if you want those dollars and you sit out, and all of a sudden you don't start bringing the cups. So that's where I'm at.